I'd rented the cabin near Bela Lake for its silence. No neighbors for 20 kilometers, no streetlights, just pine forests that swallowed sound and a narrow asphalt ribbon locals called the Road of Death. My only anchor was Vlad's stop, a fluorescent-lit box clinging to the Transfăgărășan highway. 20 minutes away if I ignored the speed limit, which I always did. At 2 a.m., after hours debugging code in the cabin's damp chill, hunger hit like a migraine. The drive was a tunnel of blackness, my headlights cutting through fog that smelled of wet earth and decaying leaves. The store's buzz of strip lights felt like stepping into another planet. I ordered a mititai sandwich, then paced the snack aisles. My bones itched from too much caffeine and the ADHD that made stillness feel like drowning. That's when I saw him. At the far end of the dairy aisle, a man sat cross-legged before the glass freezer doors, facing the ice cream tubs like a penitent at an altar. He wore a mud-caked Tsimblau wool coat despite the store's sticky heat. I moved closer, pretending to examine potato chips. His shoulders hunched inward, spine twisted as if his bones were made of wet rope. When I finally turned the corner, he snapped his head toward me. No warning, no blink. His eyes were wide, too wide, pupils swallowing the irises. His lower lip trembled violently like a plucked wire. But it was his stare that froze my blood. Not angry, not curious. Empty, like looking through a window into a house with no lights on. I stepped back, heart slamming against my ribs. He didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared as condensation fogged the freezer glass behind him, turning it into a milky veil. I retreated to the counter, shoulders tense, waiting for my food while glancing at the aisle. He never emerged. When the cashier handed me the paper-wrapped sandwich, I fled. Outside, the cold mountain air bit my face. I was reversing onto the highway when movement flickered in my side mirror. A figure in a brown coat sprinted from the store entrance, vanishing into the tree line. Not walking, running. The Dacia pickup roared to life beyond the pines. I sped up, gravel spitting under my tires. My cabin was 15 minutes away. 15 minutes of switchbacks with 1,000-foot drops. The road narrowed, trees pressed in like black walls. That's when I saw them, 2 pale yellow beams blooming in my rearview mirror, gaining fast. I slowed instinctively, thinking police, but the headlights climbed closer, illuminating my interior with a sickly glow. No sirens, just relentless acceleration. My breath fogged the windshield. I pressed the gas, 80 kilometers an hour, 100. The beams clung to my bumper. I recognized the truck's bent grill from the parking lot, recognized the silhouette behind the wheel. My hands slicked the steering wheel. Why me? The sandwich sat forgotten on the passenger seat, grease seeping through the paper. The smell of onions mixed with my sweat. At a hairpin turn, I risked a glance back. The truck filled my mirror, close enough to see the cracked windshield, close enough to see his face pressed against the glass, mouth open, lips still vibrating. He rammed my rear bumper. Once, twice, metal screamed. My sedan fishtailed, tires skidding on loose shale. I fought the wheel, knuckles white. The third impact sent me sliding toward the cliff's edge. Guardrails ended a kilometer back. Below us, only darkness and the roar of the Argus River. Terror sharpened into clarity. He wants me off this mountain. I downshifted hard, braking abruptly. The truck overshot, its taillights swinging wildly as it careened into my lane. For 3 breathless seconds we drove side by side. His window was down. Cold air howled into my car. I smelled wet wool and something sour, like spoiled milk. His dead eyes locked onto mine. No rage, no triumph, just absence. Then he yanked the wheel left. His truck veered across the center line, tires shrieking. I swerved right toward the cliff. His bumper clipped my door.
Glass shattered, metal buckled. The Dacia spun, headlights sweeping across the pines like searchlights before plunging over the embankment. I heard the crash, a wet crunch of steel and stone, before silence swallowed the night again.
I drove home shaking. Dawn stained the sky bruised purple when I called the police from my cabin. 2 officers arrived hours later. They took notes as I described the chase, the truck, the man's coat. No record of a Dacia pickup on that stretch last night, the older one said, tapping his radio. No crash reports, no wreckage. They walked the cabin perimeter. No tire marks, no broken branches. Stress does strange things, Domnul, the younger officer murmured. They left without taking a statement. My car's dented door was repaired last week, but at midnight I still walked to Vlad's stop. Not for sandwiches, for proof. The security camera above the entrance, always pointing at the empty parking lot. The cashier who served me that night, transferred to Brasov. Last Tuesday I bought cigarettes there. As I left, the freezer section hummed behind me. I turned. An empty aisle. Just fogged glass and the smell of frost. Then, from the shadows near the restrooms, a low rhythmic thump, like a foot tapping or lips trembling. I didn't wait for my change. Now I sit in my cabin, curtains drawn. The generator's rumble masks most sounds, but sometimes beneath it I hear it. Gravel shifting under heavy boots, the scrape of a hand on my porch railing, and always, always, the smell of wet wool drifting through the cracks under my door. I don't open it. I just turn off the lights and wait for the engine to start again.
The world fell away at the edge of the asphalt. Beyond it, northern Ontario's logging roads were a spiderweb of gravel and dirt, twisting through an endless black forest. My sturdy Land Cruiser, packed with mapping equipment and data drives, was my only companion. As a freelance cartographer, these desolate routes were my office, my bread and butter. It was long past midnight, sometime in late August 2022, and the air was thick with the scent of damp pine and wood smoke from a distant, unseen cabin. I was barely 25, but these midnight drives were routine. My focus was on the winding path ahead, an old folk song barely audible over the hum of the engine, when twin flashes of red cut through the darkness. Hazards. Up ahead, pulled
onto the crumbling shoulder, was an old, rust-pitted Mercury topaz. My stomach tightened. You don't see many broken-down cars out here, especially not at this hour. My first instinct was to keep driving. The stories I'd heard, the local legends of this vast, unforgiving wilderness flashed through my mind. But then I imagined my own sister, stranded alone in this chilling void. I slowed, my hand instinctively reaching for the heavy-duty fixed-blade survival knife sheathed under my seat, just in case.
As my headlights washed over the scene, a young woman emerged from the shadows clinging to the passenger door of the Mercury. She looked no older than me. Strands of dark hair clung to a pale, drawn face, and her small, thin lips trembled. She wore only a light jacket, shivering despite the oppressive summer humidity. I cracked my passenger window an inch. "Everything all right?" I called out, my voice sounding thin in the immense silence. She rushed to my door, her eyes wide, darting between me and the impenetrable forest behind her car. "My car just died," she pleaded, her voice a high, reedy whisper. "No signal out here. Could you just get me to Blackwater Crossing, please?" Blackwater Crossing was a logging outpost, barely a dot on the map, and 2 hours from here. But something in her frantic urgency, the way her eyes avoided mine, made a cold knot form in my gut. Still, I unlocked the door,
Better to have her in sight, I reasoned. She slipped inside, the faint scent of sickly sweet perfume filling the cabin. "Thank you," she mumbled, not looking at me, her fingers drumming in nervous rhythm on her thigh.
I paused, my foot hovering over the accelerator. "Did you hit something, or did the engine just cut out?" I asked. Her head snapped up. "Just drive," she hissed, a surprising sharpness in her tone. "Please, just drive." My unease solidified. I glanced at her, then, a fleeting second, back at her abandoned car. That's when I saw him, a tall, gaunt figure stepping out from behind the Mercury, swallowed by the deep shadows of the pines. And then, a flicker to my left, another shape, closer to the road, holding something long and blunt, a repurposed logging axe handle. My survival instinct screamed. I didn't hesitate. I slammed my foot down. The Land Cruiser
Roared, gravel spitting from under the tires. The woman beside me gasped, then screamed, "No! Stop!" She began fumbling wildly in her oversized shoulder bag. I knew with sickening certainty what she was reaching for. Before she could find it, I barked, "Freeze!" My hand shot down, retrieving the knife. I didn't point it at her, but rested it clearly on the steering wheel, its polished blade reflecting the dashboard lights. She froze, her hand still buried in her bag. Her eyes were fixed ahead, wide and unblinking, an expression I couldn't decipher. The 2 hours to Blackwater Crossing were an eternity. The woman sat rigid beside me, silent, her breath shallow. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves outside felt like an approaching threat. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, the knife still gleaming. Finally, the faint flickering neon sign of the Iron Buck Grill and Fuel appeared through the fog. A semi-truck and a pickup were parked, their engines idling. Life. Other people. I braked hard, pulling in next to the semi-truck's roar. "Get out," I ordered, my voice hoarse. She refused, whispering something incomprehensible about being stranded. My resolve hardened. I leaned across her, fumbling with the unfamiliar passenger door handle, and yanked it open. "Get out now," I insisted, practically shoving her. She stumbled, falling onto the damp asphalt, a string of garbled, angry words spilling from her. One of the truckers, a burly man with a thick beard, started jogging over, drawn by the commotion. I barely registered his approach. "She's part of it," I yelled, pointing back towards the logging road. "They were waiting." Then, without another glance, I peeled out of the lot, leaving the screaming woman and the confused trucker behind. I didn't look back. I drove another 30 kilometers before pulling into a deserted rest stop, my hand still shaking so violently I couldn't hold the coffee I'd gotten. I needed to know. My eyes fell on the passenger seat. Buried deep between the worn cushions where she'd been fumbling, I found them. A roll of industrial-grade duct tape, a bundle of heavy-duty zip ties, and a black knitted balaclava. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a simple carjacking, not a robbery. It was something far more sinister, predatorial. I threw the items into the rest stop's overflowing trash bin, sanitizing my hands with burning alcohol, trying to scrub away the lingering scent of her perfume and the metallic tang of my own fear. I never reported it. To the local authorities, I was just some random lone cartographer with a story that would sound like paranoia, or worse, implicate me in some dubious act of self-defense on a remote road. My job carried its own unspoken rules. No loose ends, no unnecessary attention. But the silence now felt different, heavier. Every snapping twig on my cabin porch, every distant howl of a coyote made my skin crawl. The wilderness had teeth, and I had seen its smile. And now, sometimes, late at night when the generator finally dies, I swear I hear it. The faint, almost imperceptible whisper of gravel crunching just outside my window.